Hello students, welcome to the thescidiaries, and this module is basically designed for the student who belongs to geology and earth sciences. Although students from other branches, if you are archaeologist or you are an environmental scientist, so you can also continue this module. It will be helpful for you too, guys. So the first thing that arises in our mind is that why do we need field geology? So its answer is quite simple. Actually, field geology provides us the crucial elements, and it helps us to enhance our knowledge and understanding of the things which we read in books, because field studies are the primary means of obtaining geological knowledge. And uh, and if you collect a improper sample from the field, then in that case, even if you have good facilities to analyze the samples, you will not able to get the history of that sample. So in that case, the potential of that sample is also being lost. So in this module we will mainly focuses on the four intellectual challenges that everybody face while dealing with the field geology. The first challenge is to decide what data we have to collect in order to address the scientific questions. We start with an objective and we will have to focus on that objective. In order to fulfill that objective, we have to collect data, and it is really important to decide what kind of data you are going to collect. The second challenge is the selection of suitable exposures from where you will be able to collect the data. The third and the most important challenge is how you record the data which you collected in the field, how you express your observations, because from there onwards, if third person reads your field diary, he or she will be able to understand what actually observations were made in the field. The fourth and the last challenge is understanding and interpreting the basic observations. So we basically deals with these all four challenges during this complete modules, and there will be a lot of episodes in the upcoming videos where we will focus on these four challenges. So now the question arises, what kind of output you will get from these module. So this complete module will help you to taking the notes and the deciding what sort of data you will have to collect. Together with, you will also learn the basics of clinometer and Brunton compasses. In the coming episodes, we will also discuss about the introduction about the traversing and geological mapping, and at the end of this module we will discuss what kind of sampling we will have to do, and what sort of things to be written during report writing. So some tips I would like to share. The first thing is, before starting your field work, you should decide on the overall objective of your field work, and you should remind yourself about these objectives during the field work also, because sometime what happens, we will deviate it from our objectives during the field work. So please keep remind yourself about these objectives. So these are the common objectives for completing the geological field work. Suppose you are going to get an insight of the geology of an area. In that case, you will have to collect the data on lithology, structural, and the age data from the literature survey. Suppose you are interested in geological mapping of an certain area, so in that case you will have to collect data on lithology, structural information, and in that case you will have to visit a lot of exposures around that area. Suppose you are interested in geochemical analysis and your objective is to collect sample for geochemical analysis in order to understand the earth processes, so in that case you will have to collect samples from different exposures of the different rock bodies. So depending on the objectives, you will have to switch from one data to another data. So here I would like to share this one photograph. which differentiate between the aim and the objective. Usually what happens, student use these two words interchangeably, and the aim is mainly focuses on the ultimate goal, and whereas the objective is mainly focuses on the specific or individual goal. So suppose you are going to a field work, so in that case, suppose your objective is to produce a geological map. So in that case you will collect data on lithology and structural contexts, etc. So your specific goal is confined to the lithologies and structural information, whereas your the ultimate goal means your ultimate aim is to understand the geological history of that area. So this is a very fine difference between the aim and the objective. So this is one photo I took from Quora, so you can please go through it to clear the difference between the aim and objective. So in field geology, our aim is to understand the geological processes, the physical, chemical, and biological processes that have occurred over the geologic time. And this will be understood by collecting the data from different rocks, soils, and unconsolidated deposits. So this is our ultimate aim in field geology. Now coming to the things which are involved in the field works. So first thing is the observation and the measurement that you did in field, and the second most important thing is collection and the precise recording of the samples which will be taken forward for the laboratory analysis. So here the keyword is observation. It is really important to observe the feature in the field very minutely, because everyone perspective have different. So now the question arises: what are the advantages of geological fieldwork? We all know that the nature-loving people really likes geological fieldwork, and in many cases you will get a chance to visit certain outcrops or exposures which are not easily accessible to the tourist also. So this is a plus point for you if you are interested in geological fieldwork. Now the question which always comes in our mind, where we will do field work. My juniors also asked me so many times that which outcrop or which exposure will be good for the beginners. So exposures for the field work basically depend on the climatic zone. As far as in India, we have good exposures, but if you compare with the Antarctica or Greenland, if you want to do fieldwork in such terrains, so there you will not get good exposures due to covering of the ice. If you are living near the coastal area, then in that case cliffs will be good for you for doing the field work. If you're living near working quarries, there you will get a chance to see the fresh outcrops of fresh exposures. One important place to study the sample is the road cuts. Usually what happens during the construction of the road, we will get good road cuts where the fresh rocks was exposed, and these rocks are not face the intense effect of weathering also. It is nice to study these kind of exposures. Another exposure which is easily available are river section and stream sections. If you read in your stratigraphy books, most of the time it is mentioned that this type section is taken from this particular river section. So usually river sections are quite interesting for a geologist to study the rocks. And suppose you are not getting any exposure for doing the field work, in that case best thing is doing the reconnaissance survey. Once you complete the recce, you will get an idea of the places where you will get a chance to study the rocks, and you will probably get a good exposures. So this is the complete list of the exposures or the places where you can get a chance to study the rocks. Now I would like to check your vocabulary. Can you please differentiate between outcrop and exposure? I will give you 1 minute. Please pause this video here and try to recollect your BSc or MSc knowledge. try to recollect those lectures, and if you know the difference between these, it is quite good. So I hope you pause this video and you try to differentiate between exposure and outcrop. So the main difference between exposure and outcrop is that in case of outcrop, these are the rocks which are at the earth surface, but basically they are covered with the superficial deposits and soils, whereas in case of exposures, these rocks are visible at the earth surface, and they are not covered by the superficial deposits or soils. So these exposures, for example, if you look at the quartzite rock, so in quartzite, the rock easily not get weathered, and you will not get any kind of trees or any soil covers over the quartzite if it is an outcrop. But if you look at the shale, sandstone, such kind of sequences, there are chances of getting soil cover and superficial deposits over such kind of formations. So exposures, a good example of exposures are the quartzites. Now moving towards the observation that you made in the field. So observations has to be made at individual outcrops because these are the fundamentals. Rocks must be identified before they are mapped. There are many genetic relationships that understood only if you minutely observe the features in the field. So it is quite important for you to understand the genetic relationships by observing the features in the field. Good example of this is if you look at the igneous body. Suppose I give you a map and I just simply mark that it is a concordant igneous body. So by only looking at the map, you will not be able to tell that it is a sill or a lava flow. So such kind of distinctions can only be made if you observe that outcrop in the field. So it is quite interesting. This is an important tip for the beginners that never interpret the rock based on the single observation. You have to look for the different observation with different perspectives, and this is a cycle that you should follow during the field work. That once you reach the exposure or outcrop, you first try to observe the features which are present there, try to observe the different formations, different lithologies present there, and then gather the data, collect the data and additional relationships like the associated features which are there with the samples, and then try to put a hypothesis on the formation of that sequence of rocks. And once you put one hypothesis, try to check that hypothesis with different observations, try to discuss with your colleagues in the field. And if it is not verified, your hypothesis is not survive, then put another hypothesis, again checked it till it will become verified. I got one good paper of T.C. Chamberlain, where he discussed the problem thoroughly in his description of the method of multiple working hypothesis. This is a paper I would like to recommend. Please go through this paper. If you not get this soft copy, send me an email. I will provide it to you. Now, usually we wondered why so many hypotheses should be considered in the field. The answer is the field that outcrop cannot be revisited. The another thing is it is important to interrelate the data in the field itself to understand the genetic relationships. So if you put so many hypotheses, eventually you will get an idea about the genetic relationships of the different lithologies. So in field, for putting so many hypotheses, you must require a good imagination power to understand the whole outcrop nicely. And suppose your hypotheses are not survived, then in that case put as many possibilities you can put over those outcrops and move to the next spot of your field work. And sometimes the incorrect initial assumptions may lead to the failure of your hypothesis. So it is really important to look on the initial assumptions. If you remember, we shared one video on the age of the earth. In that video we discussed about the different theories, different hypotheses put forward by different scientists for determining the age of the earth. In that video, different scientists have different initial assumption, and most of their initial assumptions were wrong, which ultimately lead to the wrong age of the earth. The same thing happens here also, and the same thing will happen with you also if you have an incorrect initial assumptions. Now sometimes it happens that you will get complex outcrops, and in that case you will have to interpret the such complex relationships between different rocks, and these conditions arises due to the two or more processes which act simultaneously, and which further leads to the overprinting of two or different geologic events. In such cases you require good observation skills and a lot of hypotheses to understand the mutual relationships of different events. Now coming to the mapping, in the upcoming episodes we will discuss about traversing and mapping. So questions usually comes in our mind that why mapping is so important. So mapping is usually important because many faults and fault discovered only by geologic mapping, and in order to understand the area well, you should map those features which you get during the fieldwork. Apart from that, we all know that this forgetting curve, that even after 1 hour we forget the percentage, about 50 percentage of the data after 1 hour. So it is good practice if you put data on the map during field work. It will give you a broad idea. When you look at the regional level, it will helps you to understand the geologic processes in a correct way. So maps and sections are ideals because if you present your data to the third person, it will give a good picture of the whole area. So it is really important to map and prepare the section of the studied area. So there are different other qualities that one student should have if he or she will doing a field work. So first thing is the teamwork, because in order to cover a large area during reconnaissance or during detailed survey, one cannot easily cover whole area alone. He require a team. So good mutual understanding between your teammates is really important in completing the task. Other things are like management skill and leadership skills are required if you are going for a long duration of field work. And one thing that I would like to emphasize on the learning habit, that one should learn from the other teammates during field work, because neither your teachers nor me knows the all things about geology. We should learn from each other. So please make a good habit of learning things from each other. Apart from that, physical fitness and life saving skills are usually important if you are going for a field work, especially life saving skills, because most of the time probably you will get snakes or scorpions during field work. So in that case you should able to save yourself from such difficulties. Moreover, one more thing is you should have a good knowledge of the first aid, because in case of emergency you will have to save your teammates. If you not have good knowledge about the first aid, you will not able to save your teammates. So that's all for today. Let's quickly revise all the things that we discussed so far. So we start with for whom this module will be. Then we will focus on the why field geology is important for us, and then we will move towards the four main intellectual challenges that one will face during fieldwork, like what data he has to take, what are the suitable exposures, what are the important things while recording the features in report writing, and how you will be understand and interpret the observations. Then we will discuss the outputs that you will get, and most importantly you will learn sampling and the report writing from this module. Then we will discuss the objectives, what are the objectives that one should have before going to the field work. We focus on the aim of the geological field work. We discuss the observation and collection, what are the different advantages of fieldwork, and what are the classical sites from where you will get an idea about the different rocks. And then we will differentiate between the two words, that is exposure and outcrops. And then briefly we discuss the observations that one should make during the field work. We discuss this complete cycle of proving and testing your hypothesis, to interpret the complex relationships between different rocks, why are the mapping so important, and in the last we discuss some other qualities that are required for a good field geologist. So that's all for today. In the next episode, we will discuss what are the plannings of the fieldwork and what are the different equipments that are required for a geologist to initiate a field work. If you like this video, please hit a like, and please do subscribe to the Thescidiaries for better understanding. Thank you.